Hey, what's up, family? I'm Rachel.
And I'm Joe.
And we are Two Crazy Ketos.
And if you're new to our channel, welcome. Here on Two Crazy Ketos, we do different things like recipe videos and we do product reviews. We talk about various keto topics, and every Monday we go live on Keto Beyond the Couch because life exists beyond the couch.
You can find us in different social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
And we have a website, which is twocrazyketos.com, and that's where you're going to find all of our different recipes. Now, we do upload at least 5 new videos every single week, so make sure you subscribe to our channel.
And don't forget to hit the little bell icon, and that way every single time we get to talk to a beautiful young lady who is momming her way through a keto journey, you'll be alerted to it.
So in today's podcast, we're going to be speaking with Lindsey, who, like Rachel said, is a mom to 3 children and is having some amazing success on keto.
Hey, Lindsey, we are so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for being on our podcast today.
I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for letting me click into your schedule and have this chance to chat with y'all.
I love it. Now, I was noticing your shirt. It says sometimes, and there is a fin from a shark chasing a swimmer. And it says sometimes motivation finds you. And I love that so much because especially talking about motherhood, there's so many times where I want to have my motivation like based in an area of peace. Like I want it to look like a beautiful, flowery motivation that I'm completely calm when I'm making decisions for myself. But sometimes my motivation for doing something is out of a fight or flight response. It is, I mean, there's just a high level of emotion attached to my motivation. And I was wondering if you could share some of the motivation that caused you to come to keto.
Absolutely. I was definitely found by motivation more so than me just like being in that peaceful place and being motivated. I was struggling a lot with my health. I had a lot of inflammation. I had a lot of skin inflammation. I have a TMJ disorder where I don't have enough cartilage between my mandible joints to be able to sort of cushion the talking that I do. And so I had a lot of that inflammation. I was feeling very sluggish and my teeth were starting to deteriorate on me, which is not like one of the most common things that I say on my channel, but I felt like I was deteriorating. And what motivated me was the fact that I, at that time in my life, had a 2-year-old or an almost 2-year-old. And if I couldn't keep up with her, what was I going to do if we got pregnant again? So I felt like my motivation was really stemming from, I have to make this change so that I can be here to raise my children well, support my husband well, and just be able to function in life.
So obviously you had like the encouragement in that situation to find a better way of eating and to get as healthy as possible for you. What led you to the keto way of eating versus another, sort of diet that is, purporting health?
I will attempt to give the Cliff Notes version here. So in college, I was always go, go, go. I'm a very energetic, busy person in general. And I noticed a lot of my clothing started to get a lot tighter. This was in the early 2000s. I thought about trying Weight Watchers, and I did like a 90-day trial run for, a couple of bucks. And I cannot stand tracking. It is the bane of my existence to sit there and record what I'm already doing. As soon as I've done the thing, I've already moved on with my life. I'm not here to live in the past. So I struggled much with that. And I said, this is pointless. I'm not changing anything. This is not functioning the way my brain functions. Goodbye, Weight Watchers. And then I just kind of lived my life. My husband and I, we got married after college. We started having our children. And really what got me to the keto way of life was I had to go on a liquid diet for my jaw, for my TMJ disorder, in order to allow my jaw a chance to alleviate all of the inflammation. I was still nursing my oldest at the time, and I couldn't take the heavy-hitting anti-inflammatory meds to sort of help manage that. I did the liquid diet, figured out I just lost a whole pile of weight and I have no more inflammation. I was doing nothing but those instant breakfast shakes from Nestle, that are packed full of sugar and no protein whatsoever. It was garbage food. But it kind of got me interested in what other things can I do? And during that period, I learned how to make yogurt. This was what, 2012, 2013. I learned how to make yogurt. I learned how to do a few different things for myself. And then I started researching more about slow food. So more of a nourishing traditions kind of way where you're fermenting a lot of things. You are sprouting grains. You are trying to get rid of the phytates and really trying to alleviate inflammation from those anti-nutrients that are drawing those minerals from your body. I did that for a while. Loved doing that. Ground up all my own wheat, made my own sourdough, did all of the things. And then in 2015, we had been living in Alaska and we had just moved to Wisconsin. And my husband and I, we were both still holding on to a lot of that freshman 50 from college, and it had been a few years. So I started looking all over the internet, just kind of interested in whatever. And I came across a video for Trim Healthy Mama, which is carb cycling in a different package. So I listened to their story and told my husband, I want to do this thing. Well, we were sitting there like rubbing nickels together at the end of every month. We could not afford to buy a book or to buy special food or do anything beyond just like whatever you can do with this $100 for the week is what you can do. So I researched the Trim Healthy Mama thing and I started following their way of eating. I did it very simply with just store ingredients, basic vegetables, basic meats, very, very simple. And as I was doing that process, they do allow carb cycling. The carb cycling piece of the puzzle, I found I felt like trash when I would eat carbs, even though they completely eliminate sugar from their way of eating. Just eating oatmeal, I felt exhausted, I felt starving, and I was using protein to pair with those grains. So it wasn't like I was, starving myself on just carbohydrates. I was not feeling well. And after a couple of weeks doing that, I realized I was only eating their protein fat meals, not their protein carb meals. And I felt awesome. I dropped all of my water weight that I was retaining, and then I continued to lose weight beyond that. So that's kind of where it all started. And from that point forward, I have done keto, and I did have a little bit of a relapse into standard American diet when I was pregnant with my third, because my pregnancy and my body are not compatible. And I cannot do much beyond just make it to the bathroom and then try to survive raising other children. So
Right.
it was a little bit of a sidestep for a few months, but then I got back into it.
It's interesting that you talk about how you didn't feel good on carb cycling, because people will message us and email us and say, what are your thoughts on carb cycling? Do you think it would help me? And my response is always, we don't need carbohydrates. And, I can give you some examples of people who you would think as an athlete, they've got to have carbohydrates. You hear people say you can't build muscle without carbohydrates, or you can't run a marathon without carbohydrates. And I look at like Robert Sykes, Keto Savage, who I think it's like 9 years at this point. He's a natural competitive bodybuilder with no carbohydrates. Kristen Powell, who runs marathons with no carbohydrates. And people say, well, carb cycling seems like a good solution. The only problem with that, even if you're going to carb cycle with just like sweet potatoes or oatmeal, not even getting into the sugar aspect of it, it takes about 48 hours for your body to go back to fat after you have the carbohydrate. So let's say you're going to carb cycle once a week. And I don't know how you were doing it, but I've seen people experiment with like 1 day a week or on the weekends. I'm going to do keto during the week, and then on the weekend, I'm going to do carbohydrates. The problem is let's say we're eating keto Monday through Friday. On Saturday and Sunday, we're going to have carbohydrates. Then it's going to take us 2 days to get back into eating, burning fat, at which point we feel like garbage for those 2 days. Now, by the time you feel better, it's time to eat carbohydrates again.
The carb cycling thing for me, when I was doing or attempting to trim Healthy Mama my way through weight loss, they wanted you to have a carbohydrate meal once a day, sometimes twice a day, and then have a period of time, 3 to 4 hours between that last bite and that next first bite. So it was a combination of carb cycling and meal timing. And they had a lot of good science behind the things they were doing. And my theory is that you can find a white paper study on literally anything that you want to find a white paper study on. You can
True.
find data to support things. You can find data to say that is terrible. It's just a matter of how you package that data. And I was attempting to do their carbohydrate versions of meals once a day, and I was still feeling like trash. And so I decided I'm not going to have the oatmeal for breakfast anymore. Like, and that was kind of my go-to. Sometimes I would try to like switch up the timing of a carbohydrate meal just to try to see if I could feel better having quinoa in the evening or having sweet potatoes at lunch. I was definitely not feeling well on any of it. The high fat stuff always made me feel well. I was able to stretch my meal timing out further and not think about food as much as well. The brain fog was gone. My skin was clearing up, like a whole host of symptoms. They just started to get better. And that the carb cycling, it was definitely not for me. And knowing that your body does take so long to get back into fat burning mode, Trim Healthy Mama was never going to allow my body to fuel myself on fat alone. It was constantly just waiting for that next carb hit.
Well, but I am very thankful that you shared your attempt to do that too, because I think it's good for people in the audience to hear what is it like to carb cycle for a normal person, because this is how we would utilize it. We would be following a certain, daily protocol, not as someone who is trying to be an endurance athlete. Like I'm just a regular person that would be utilizing it as a tool in my personal health toolbox. So it's really nice to see somebody who has authentically done it. And then what is your perspective on that? Because I think it helps us to decide for ourselves, like, do we think we would like to put ourselves in that same kind of experiment. So, for some people, it's going to be like, you know what? I trust Lindsey's data collection on this, and I don't need to research this particular thing for myself. What was your husband and your children's response to this way of eating?
Okay, I have 3 daughters, and I definitely see the mental side of weight loss and diet culture. And I want to insulate my children as best as I can from the drawbacks of that culture and give them hard facts so that I can teach them to think critically about what they're doing to their bodies and for their bodies. In the beginning, I tried very hard not to say anything about a diet. I tried to say, well, mama's not eating the sugar. Mama's not doing that. I'm going to eat this. But I also made a very, very concerted effort that we would eat all meals together. And that way we are not like, mom's not hiding away, eating food that is different. So does that mean it's special or does that mean it's bad if she's hiding away? It's just one of those things where I tried to make it as very family inclusive as possible. I would make meals for my family, and for my girls, I would allow them to have, toast alongside of our eggs and bacon, or I would make them oatmeal if that's what they wanted. And then they would just see me eating whole food, bacon and cabbage and eggs, very natural foods. I, with my husband in the mix, he would normally go off to work and come home for dinner, and I would make whatever dish I was going to make, whether it was some kind of like fajitas or if it was, so many different things like spaghetti. I would have it on zoodles and I would offer everybody else noodles. And everybody's having basically the same thing. There's no weirdness about it and nobody made a big deal about it. And as I went along the process, my husband initially said to me, you tend to start things and then fade out on them very quickly. Let's not invest in money, like any money in this. You do your thing. And then whenever it fades away, we'll all be just back in step. Well, it didn't exactly fade away. My husband started to notice that I would make, like a cilantro lime chicken and I would serve it alongside some rice for the girls. And I would have that for him if he wanted them or that. And then I would have cauli rice. And he would eventually start to notice, why aren't you eating the rice? But it took a couple of months almost. He noticed the weight loss very quickly. He did not quite piece everything together. And I tend to have a very aggressive personality. And so one of the things that I have been trying to do is to allow others to come to conclusions for themselves without me, street corner evangelizing them. I told him, you don't have to have the rice when I would offer the rice. I said to him, you're welcome to have any of the things that I'm eating. Plus, I've got these things for the girls. So eventually he would say, I don't need the potatoes. I'll have what you're having. And just by demonstrating and walking that way for about 2 months, I want to say it was, he started to eat the same way I ate and not really feel like he was missing out on anything, not really feel like it was forced on him. He was just more or less hopping on the train as the train was coming through the station. And he also travels a lot for work. He's a pilot, and he would go on these trips, and he started getting to the place where he would text me and say, this is the restaurant menu. What do you suggest I eat? And eventually, after about 2 months of that, he had it locked in his own brain, and he was able to make really excellent choices for himself without, questioning his, what am I going to do here to eat? This diet is so hard. How do I do this? Instead, it was a gradual build up and into the way to look at things, the way to just select choices off of a menu. It was a really cool experience that instead of dragging him kicking and screaming and making it, a very big to do, it was just kind of like a gentle tide coming in and then ebbing and flowing, and just it was very nice.
You brought up a really good topic here because, again, something that people message us all the time about is, okay, I'm having all of these amazing results on keto. I'm losing weight. My health is improving. I'm reversing my type 2 diabetes. I have more cognitive function. I have more energy. How do I get my family to come along because they want nothing to do with it? And what you said there is exactly what I think a lot of our family members and our friends and our coworkers are thinking. And that is, we tend to fall off very quickly.
Yeah.
I know for myself, I have tried every diet other than Weight Watchers that you can think of.
Don't
I mean,
recommend it.
we were literally doing we created our own diet. We created the Progresso soup diet because we were couponers, and you were able to get cans of Progresso soup, buy one, get one free. And then there were buy one, get one free coupons. And we were eating 3 cans of Progresso soup a day each. That was our food. We've tried it all, but we usually quit within a month because either A, it doesn't work, or B, it's just boring. I mean, think about nothing but 3 cans of soup a day. Or we also did yakisoba noodles. I mean, or the cabbage soup diet, right? A lot of times it's going to take our family members or our loved ones to see we're sticking with this. This is long-term, and they have to see the results. And sometimes that takes a while.
Well, the other thing that you mentioned in sharing your story that I think is so important for people to hear is you really want your family members to come to this conclusion for themselves. Whether or not you see me and I become like, either I'm a lighthouse or a foghorn, right? So I'm trying to be a lighthouse and not a foghorn. But you want them to make the connections, like you said, that, hey, wait a second. I see my plate. I see her plate. I see things it looks like we're sort of eating the same thing, except for she's having an enhanced success rate. What is different? Let me look. One of these things is not like the other one, and hers is cauliflower rice and mine is regular white rice. And he came to that conclusion for himself. You didn't have to beat him up. You didn't have to put your marriage in a jeopardized situation because all of a sudden, as he's transitioning, you're going to have 6 months of we're at each other's throats and I'm trying to force you into it. So you kept the love. You did them the great respect of letting, him to come to his own conclusion about it. And hey, bada bing, bada boom, he came up with a conclusion that was your heart's desire for him, which was for him to eat better and to make good choices. And it's been a good display for your children as well, I would say. How have they responded to now both mommy and daddy don't have the regular white rice on their plate?
So we also don't really push hard on the whole, you have to eat this way. This food is terrible for you, because the reality is if you're a starving kid in a totally different country, having some white rice that will keep you alive versus zero food when you've been without food for weeks on end. There's demonizing foods is just not really a game I wish to play. I, however, do say these are carbs and these this is protein and this right here is fat and this is how these things function in your body. And I try to give them, like I said, facts. This is the information. Now here's what I do with this information. And we've got our oldest who is sort of working her way through puberty right now and explaining to her, when you choose to eat this thing, that is going to cause inflammation in your body. That might cause these things for you. If we choose this instead, you are going to see less inflammation, most likely. Again, everybody's different. Everybody has different body chemistry. Going to allow for that on all fronts. But if you choose to eat this way, you have the opportunity to avoid a lot of the pain and discomfort of going through puberty that I did not get when I was your age. So I do like to present it as a choice to them more often than not. And more often than not, they make better choices. I still offer them potatoes. I still offer them rice. I still make granola bars for them. And I still do a lot of things myself. I also give them the opportunity to say, I'm okay without that. I'd rather have more meat.
Now, how has it been as a mother living this way when you bring your family into social situations? Like how has your mom game been? Because I mean, sometimes, when we are in the isolation of our own home or, the protection, the fortification of our own home, it's a safe place and you can feel very confident as a mom when you're presenting different meals because these are the meals that you believe in. But then you have to go outside your door, and the pressure to be a mother is really, I can't overstate it. It's really challenging to be a mom. I mean, we live in a very visual society. This time in the world is very challenging for moms. You're dealing with an Instagram view, a Facebook view, Twitter, like all of these social medias. We didn't have to deal with it when my boys were the age of your children. And I'm just so in awe of the fact that moms are continuing to make these different choices. It's because it's not even like whether or not it's good or bad. Like sometimes it's different and people kind of push back against different. And I wonder, how do you handle things when you guys go out your front door?
For us, we have spent so much time and energy practicing like this is fact. These things are these things. This is how these things will make you feel. This is how they have made you feel in the past. And then we practice those skills over and over and over again at our own home. Once we get out into the world, it's more of a chance for them to practice those skills. And I'm a big fan of natural consequences. I want to direct my children. I want to steer them in the better direction if I can. I also really want them to make those mistakes for themselves so that they can really solidify those concepts for themselves. And, we can go out to eat at a restaurant and my girls, they might choose a cheese quesadilla at a Mexican restaurant with the rice. And all of a sudden we will notice that the 5-year-old, she crashes and burns very, very quickly because that was a whole lot of just like straight carbs with just a little bit of fat. And it's not really good for her or great for her. But we do that on such a rare occasion, that specific kind of a thing on such a rare occasion that it a one and done for a 5-year-old isn't going to be the end of the world. But for my older girls, when we do things like home group, we'll have a whole gathering of people. Everybody brings something to the meal. I will notice that my girls, they actively go and choose the protein over everything. And then they start to like add little bits of other things to their plates. They're not going to add salad. That is not their forte. They do not care for salad. I do not care for salad. So I allow them to not choose salad. But if they wind up choosing some mashed potatoes, I'm not going to pressure them to not eat those things. And they're also not the kids that are running through the buffet line in the kitchen over and over again, snagging brownie after brownie or cookie after cookie. And I see a lot of the other children in our group doing those same things, like doing that very thing. And so I give them the freedom after I've given them the training to make decisions. And then we do talk about things after the fact. What did you choose? Okay, great. How do you feel? And we are constantly like giving them the training, like I said, and a little bit of leash so that they can test it out and see what that happens, or what happens from that, I should say. That I don't know if that kind of answers the question a lot or not.
Oh,
Yep.
absolutely.
You brought up the brownie zone. That leads me to my next question. What about sugar with the kids? We hear a lot about the rice and potatoes, but what about sugar and candy and junk food and prepackaged foods that their friends are eating?
Because we are homeschooled, we have a lot more insulation from the outside world in general. And we are part of a homeschool co-op where all of our friends are always, not always together, but we're together on the weekday for our co-op. We're together on Sundays for church. We're together for evening gatherings here and there. And we have, in our case, we have been insulated from a lot of things because we have a lot of allergies within our kid group of friends. There's a lot of kids that are allergic to dyes and artificial flavorings and a lot of those things. So a lot of us parents tend to be pretty aware of those things, and everybody tends to bring their own foods. My kids don't really notice, like, oh, so-and-so over there got to have Skittles. I didn't get Skittles. My kids don't really see that as like oh, you got a thing. They see it more like, oh, your mom brought you some food. Well, food adjacent. For all of the friend type things, most of my friends, and maybe I'm doing them a disservice. I will say this: I'm not doing things right. I'm not doing things perfectly, and I might be doing them a disservice by not exposing them to to even more opportunities to sit there and ask the questions like, why are they eating all of these packaged things when I'm eating this homemade food mom made? So maybe I am doing them a disservice there, but generally speaking, there's not a whole pile of she got that thing and I didn't. I must have lack in my life, and I'm going to go whine and complain to get what I think I need from mom.
Well, I don't think you're doing them a disservice at all. I don't think that the better test of like becoming a better swimmer is like, we're going to take you out of the pool and we're just going to drive you out into like the middle of open water. And like, because if you can, swim in 4 feet, then like the next step is like 400 feet. I actually think it's really good to have them, in a very like respected area. I mean, who their friends are. I think that we shouldn't be apologetic for that. Like,
Yeah.
who's an influence on your child. And I think that it really helps to foster discussions. You are going to have like different personalities that come out, and you're socializing them. These are people outside of our family, and they may handle things differently than we do. So I think it's just like a really good amount of socialization, and then it is scalable in a way that you kind of know what's happening, and so you can prepare to have like a discussion with them. I can remember, we had our kids in public school, and they would go out, and I had no idea what was coming home from the middle school bus, right? Like I couldn't prepare. There was such a large big ocean of people and things that they were interacting with. It was really hard. I felt like we were always in reaction mode and not necessarily parenting from a position of, confidence, that, okay, I had eyes on the situation that arose today. And so, of course, I'm sure you need to process through that. So let me lead the discussion in processing that. So I think that you have like just a great, blend of things. And as you're growing, the other people in your home group are also learning respect and how to interact. So you have a respect for them, and they have a respect for you, and even in the midst of you guys doing things differently. So I think that's really beautiful.
So you've had this success on keto. Your family's kind of following along. Your girls are learning. You started a YouTube channel. Why?
I started my YouTube channel when I was still very pregnant with my third, who is now 5. I started off in more of the homeschool space because I was always, okay, do you remember when YouTube had video responses to videos?
Oh,
there was an era where you could send in a video to the creator saying, you asked questions about these things, here's my response. And YouTube started to do away with that feature. And I am a talker and I tend to bore people to death with the things that I am in the middle of like excited about. And I wanted to be able to share those things. So I started off sharing homeschool videos at the very, very beginning. And then I delivered Lauren and then just kind of got back into here's how I'm eating. I did go back to Trim Healthy Mama while I was nursing her, just because I was petrified that my milk would dry up if I didn't have those carbs. Again, I felt like garbage. And so I was eating a whole lot more fat and a whole lot less carbs than I had been previously. And I found that my milk supply never really waned. So I did sort of stick more with fat than carbs. And there was a specific time when I delineated from doing some carbohydrate cycling for milk supply. And now we're all done. We are all done with that garbage. But I wanted to share, and I really loved the whole, like the culture of being positive about food that came from Trim Healthy Mama. So I would share what I eat in a day videos because I loved to watch those things. And I find that if I enjoy something, I want to turn around and create that thing. And I needed an outlet for it. My husband was tired of hearing about it. And like whenever you drone on about things, sometimes your spouse or your significant other can be like, okay, we're on this carousel again. Okay. So talking to a camera was an easy enough way to share the things that I was excited about while still being able to manage all of my tasks in my home and with my family and not have to go find new people to bore all the time.
that is a great thing to do. I mean, that is such a positive way to like invest your energy, invest those words. I need to get it out. For some people, journaling is a good way to get that information out. Getting involved in like a like-minded group is very helpful. And I think that that is a very beautiful therapeutic way to share
Mhm.
your story, hopefully help other people, but at the very least, I'm not just like holding on to it. I mean, it can
Mhm.
burst inside of you, I think sometimes if you feel like you can't get it out. I don't want to be like resentful to Joe if I'm like, gosh, I really need to share this. But if I feel like you're saying where he's almost got, I can picture the look on the partner face, right? Because I've experienced that too, where I'm getting really excited and I'm sharing. And it's basically like, I'm going to share until I tire myself out. And he's
Yeah.
going to tire like way faster. I was going to ask you though, you've been doing so fantastic on this. I wonder, is there an area of your keto life that you feel like you could tighten the reins on? Something that you would like to continue getting better in an area?
Okay, I have a couple of different avenues, and my brain tends to work in, uh, I don't know, my brain is a very scattered place. It's focused, like less foggy, but it's a lot of different ideas. I really am trying to get back into more physically, like I'm trying to get into a more physically toned place. So I'm doing a lot more exercise than I was, gosh, 2 years ago, 1 year ago, 5 years ago. I also I get fascinated by the different studies and the different data points. And here's the different variables that you can adjust or modify in order to get different things. And I like to change things up. I really love change, which I know is not a common uh, outlook on life, but I love change. And I've been looking into the early time restricted feeding. I've been considering the whole intermittent fasting, and I've tried it a little bit. That's not exactly my bag, but the early time restricted feeding is one of those things that I'm like, oh, yeah, I definitely want to try that. I also tend to get into sort of just like habit patterns where I will be at this place in my focus where I'm only going to eat like eggs and bacon for like forever because that's the only thing I'm craving. And then I'm going to switch it up and say, "Ooh, I really only want to eat beef for a little while because that's what I'm craving." Or, "Oh, I'm jumping back over this way and I really love some pork and some cabbage together. I'm going to do that for a while." I tend to not I tend to not diversify very well. I tend to get a hyper focus on things, and and so being able to diversify in a way that keeps my interest peaked in a lot of different areas while also not going beyond the reach of where I've already experimented and found I don't feel well, that's definitely an area that I could tweak.
Before we let you go, we always like to ask people 3 different questions about getting started on keto and what their experience was like. So the first question we actually have for you is when you first got started, and I know you started a little bit differently, but when you first got started on this way of eating, what was the thing that scared you the most about it?
I think what scared me the most was the fact that my husband was right. I usually pick up a hobby and I get excited about it to begin with, and then it wanes. And I'm like, well, that's old hat. I'm going to move on with my life. And at that stage, when I first started changing the way I ate, I did feel a very strong need to change something. And I was afraid that I was going to peter out on it and just not follow through.
I really appreciate you sharing that. And when your husband said that to you, like, a lot of times you give up on stuff, or like this may be just for like a cycle and it may be like other things you've tried. I appreciate his honesty. He was not trying to be mean or like
No.
torpedo your plans. He was just observing something that he had found out about you, as in being
Yeah.
your partner of life in life. And definitely that is something that Joe said about me. I mean, even to the point where like, okay, he hadn't tried Weight Watchers, but I did several rounds of Weight Watchers. So like we really truly had tried it all. And an observation about us was the same as the observation your husband made about you, which is we've tried a lot of things and we've quit a lot of things. Like it's so funny. We actually say there's a lot of quit in that girl, or there's a lot of quit in that boy. And there was definitely a lot of quit in us. Mostly because we weren't eating properly. We hadn't found the food that actually nourished our mind and body. I mean, it's not all our fault. We tried the things that experts had said, this is what you're supposed to eat if you're trying to accomplish this particular goal. So we had to learn for ourselves. But I appreciate the fact that you're sharing that statement, because you're not alone in that and we're not alone in that. And I'm sure that there's somebody listening right now teetering on quitting because somebody that really knows them, somebody that they know and they trust their opinion, has said something along those lines. Like, hey, this may be something that you just quit later on, like all the other things you've quit. And I hope that they hear Lindsey's story and our story, because that's fine that somebody says something, but I don't have to roll on like it's truth. I don't have to move forward like that is the only thing that you can say about me, or like that is my future because it has been my past experience before. So I'm really, really thankful for that. And I think that that's a genuine fear that a lot of people hold, which is, man, no one is really thinking that this is going to be a long-term switch for me. So why bother getting started if I'm only going to quit? Why don't we just skip right to the quit? So I really appreciate you sharing that thought. Another thing we wanted to ask you was, once you did get started, what is something good or bad that surprised you about this way of eating?
Oh gosh. I think the thing that surprised me first was the fact that my mental clarity improved dramatically. I had been sleep deprived for years at that point that I started. I had a 5-year-old. I had to do math there. I had a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and neither of them really slept through the night very well for those first few years. And I was sleep deprived. I struggled with my cognitive function a lot. And once the sugar was eliminated from my life, I was able to think more clearly. I was able to retain information better. I was able to just function better. And it was like I had an attitude adjustment without purposing to have an attitude adjustment. I was a more involved mom. I was a more engaged mom. I was a more engaged wife. I was a more engaged person in my community because my brain didn't feel so foggy anymore.
Wow. I mean, we need to label this the diet for parenthood,
Right.
because you're absolutely right about that. And people, we have a new grandbaby. Our children just became parents recently in November, and they're eating a more low carb, keto-ish, keto adjacent like way of eating in order for them to have more energy in this season. And I think a lot of people are Googling, what should I eat for diabetes? What should I eat for kidney function? And we need to be Googling, what do I eat to parent? What is going
Yes.
to make me the most present, clear minded, especially when you're talking about parenting the littles?
Hmm.
I need to be able to eat what I need to eat to be the best toddler mother, preschool mother, elementary mother, infant mother that I can possibly be. This is the diet for it. This is the way of eating that is going to energize you, give you a clear mind. I find for myself, it's really spoken into mental health a lot for me.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
but that also is speaking not just to somebody who's been, had medical prescriptions for mental health, but for people who are just like, goodness me, I feel like I am living from one emotion to emotion, because I'm so tired, and it's just like all my feelings seems like they're dictating, how my day is going to go.
Hmm.
The keto, it really does speak into that, so you don't feel like you're just handling situations very emotionally. Is that something that you have found to be true as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I tended to function from a place of one sugar fix to the next sugar fix. And in between those two fixes, I was at the low of I tend to lean more toward anger than depression. And so I would just be like right on the bubble of I'm about to snap. I'm about to snap. If you don't stop messing with your sister, I'm about to snap. Let me get some sugar. Oh, okay. I can handle the situation better now. And I would snack all the time. Once I switched over to eliminating all of that garbage from my life, I was able to tolerate the trials of raising toddlers and preschoolers at that very beginning stage of going low carb. I was able to tolerate their dust ups or their issues so much more efficiently, effectively, gently. I'm not one to sort of bend towards gentleness, but I was able to because I was no longer constantly searching for the next sugar fix or just letting my emotions just roar out of my face.
So one more question before we let you go. When you meet somebody who's first getting started on keto, what is your number one recommendation to them?
I've had a lot of people in my life decide to start keto. And namely, my father, this past New Year's, they came and he said, I think I'm going to start keto once we get back to the house. And the first thing I told him was, you need to find food you like. And if you have questions, I want you to text me in the moment. You're asking whether or not you should drink this milk with having a cereal. I'm going to direct you otherwise. So I think the first thing that people need is that support system, having a buddy to say, I'm doing this thing. What would the data show, or what would the parameters show? Because memorizing the whole list of keto foods, which we know there's no such thing as keto foods, memorizing things that you're allowed to eat, that's a lot of energy and effort when you're starving and you're like, I just need to eat something and I don't have any cooked bacon on hand. And so having someone to bounce that off of is huge. And I have to say, as a tangent, that is probably the greatest thing that I admire about the two of y'all is the fact that you have developed community so beautifully. And you have developed a space for people to be able to come and ask their questions in a judgment-free zone and ask, how do I do this? Or I'm having this issue. And so many people will step up and say, in a judgment-free way, this is what I see, or I would suggest this. Have you tried that? And there's just such a thriving community that the two of y'all have built. And having that is probably the very first thing I would recommend people do.
Thank you so much, Lindsey. That's such a kind thing to say because we do believe in community. And what I love about what you said, and I think something that every person can really run with is don't get in your mind that it needs to be an expert. Like somehow it's like, okay, when you have a question about stuff, make sure you like text what, Dr. Barry, like text a physician. Like sometimes we put on a pedestal, somebody who's like a medical expert. And we're like, we don't feel qualified to answer questions from those people that may have questions as they're getting started on keto. But the fact of the matter is, there's a lot of things that you have lived through. You've answered those questions for yourself and you can save them a lot of potholes. And you need to understand that, and leverage the fact that they're texting you because they know more than a stranger you really want them to be successful. You love them and you want to help them. And it's never a bother. If I text my mother or she texts me, whether it is 1:00 in the morning or it's 1:00 in the afternoon, it's okay because we love one another. And I really want to help you no matter what. So finding that a buddy, I think is just such great advice. And I do appreciate the fact that because social media runs around the clock, that if you are having a question or maybe you make a buddy in either our Mighty Networks or our Facebook family group, because there's people all over the world in there, you could have an issue at 2:00 in the morning and there's somebody to answer that cry for help. So don't be afraid to reach out. And also don't be afraid to be that encouragement for somebody that's getting started.
Speaking of social media, where can everybody find you?
I am only on the YouTubes. So Lindsey Murphy, that is my channel online. I find that for me personally, social media is not, it's not the best thing for my mental health. And, I said I tend to lean more towards anger and I tend to get that way. So I stay to my YouTube channel. I am a part of y'all's Mighty Networks and I will pop on every now and again. And sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, I could say something here. But social media for me, it really rests on the YouTube channel.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Lindsey. It's so nice to see parents of young children going, okay, there is a different way, and not feeling like they're depriving their children and not giving into the pressure from outside people going, hey, you're a horrible parent if you don't give your kids packages of Oreos. It's really enlightening to see that.
It really is. And I think that when, parents want to do something differently, especially the kids are already existing. So this is not we're trying to transition a baby into a way of eating and it's easy. But when you decide okay, I want to change things, it can be daunting. How do I do that? It feels like such a big thing to transition a family and the way that they eat that we're almost crippled in our analysis of, we get analysis paralysis because we're afraid to move forward. How would we take that first step? And Lindsey reminded us today that it's just living it out one meal at a time, but do it at the family table where all of life is shared and there's love there and there's conversation there and you see it in context. And she's just shown us today how to live out this life in such a positive way. And I know that her children are so blessed by her.
Well, that is going to be the end of today's podcast. And once again, we want to remind you, if you're brand new, make sure you head down below and hit that subscribe or follow button. We upload new podcasts every single week. And until next time, I'm Joe.
And I'm Rachel.
And we are
the two crazy ketos.